welcome to the Skew Space. How you doing today? You okay?
Good, how are you?
Yeah, really good, thank you, really good. So we've got a really interesting topic today. It's all about securing the financial sector, and with a particular focus on the challenger bank scene. Now, that will become clear as to why Vladimir is our guest, but we are in capable hands. So Vlad, could you tell the audience a little bit about yourself, if that's okay?
Yeah, so my name is Vladimir Krupnov. I've been leading threat intelligence at Revolut Group for the past 6 years. Before that, I used to work for the company called Digital Shadows in the role of security consultants. And before that, I enjoyed my times in Cambridge University.
Perfect, okay, no problem. So, like I say, Vlad is the CTI Lead for Revolut Group. So, as mentioned, we are in capable hands for today's topic. So, to segue in then, Vlad, the way I view the challenger bank scene is I kind of always put it in comparison with the traditional banks, and how sort of the challenger banks are coming up thick and fast on the traditional banking sector. It's kind of like the traditional banks have always been going like that, but the challenger banks are coming like that. And I suppose I put that down to the flexibility, the agility of innovation. So my first question to you is, firstly, is that correct? And secondly, how do you sort of balance innovation with risk?
I think we can start with the phrase that we're generally tech companies with the banking licenses.
Nice, okay.
And that explains a lot.
Okay.
So I remember 6 years ago when I just started. To be fair, we were a bit of a different company. So there is lots of the growth journey and maturity. And as you correctly mentioned, any sort of like growth and dynamism and innovation, it expands your threat landscape, and it attracts new type of the threat actors, and also obviously makes you want to look into some areas more rather than you looked before.
Yep.
So as you scale as a company, your threat landscape scales as well.
Yep.
And the balance is, well, scaling faster.
Okay.
Exactly. So as you've probably seen the tremendous growth of Revolut over the previous year. So we're a very growth focused company.
Yep.
Right. Compared to some other challenger banks, we have a bit of a very much fast forward strategy focused on innovation or expansion, and that doesn't make my role easier, I would say, and security in general.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, this dynamism, it also play a good role.
Okay.
Because the company is always changing and transforming.
Yes.
And that helps us to be a bit. You see, we never stale in the same direct, right?
Yes.
So we kind of always adapt. We always agile. We always experiment.
Yep.
Which definitely helps us to prevent some of the issues faced by the challenger banks.
Okay, so to kind of come on
by the legacy banks.
Yeah, okay. So to kind of come in on that, just to check my understanding, and do correct me if I'm wrong, Vlad, is, like you say, because of this rapid growth, the attack surface is obviously always changing, it's getting larger. But what you're saying is the approach compared to traditional finance, for example, is that the shackles are off, the handcuffs are off, and that you have the allowance to maybe adopt secure by design methodologies, whatever it might be, more different tools, there might be different budget, there might be different team structures. Is that what you're saying? Have I understood that rightly? Is that the fact that you just have a more fluid approach to security? Am I right in thinking that?
Yeah, exactly. I think in terms of the problem solving, company-wide, we are more or less utilizing the same framework.
Yep.
So there is a problem, there is a solution, how much it would cost for us to engineer the solution.
Yep.
Or if we can't engineer, then what's the best solution?
Yep.
Even in terms of the tooling and vendors, we have a high focus on the innovation.
Nice.
On the small companies, like we've been before years ago, right? So we're very much kind of like a pro new business, pro new ideas.
Yep.
And we do collaborate a lot in this space.
Yep.
So we with swap ideas, we're also open to hear more. Generally, these processes are very much focused. They mentioned like business case focus.
Yep.
So we don't really like budgets and these things. So we're actually trying to find solutions for the problems.
Okay.
Rather than doing the regular checkboxing.
Yep.
Obviously, as you grow, as you expand, there is more scrutiny. There is more regulation. It depends on country. So nothing is mono here. But generally, from what I've seen personally over these 6 years, we're way more aggressive and way more focused on solutions rather than just making the things stale again.
Yep. It's refreshing to hear the culture towards security, because, like I say, we're still trying to get security across in boardrooms of being a business enabler as opposed to being a cost centre. And it's refreshing to hear that Revolut are taking this approach to security.
I really like the concept of security being the healthcare provider.
Okay.
Something you don't want to see all the time, but you want it just to work.
Yes.
You don't really want to expense a lot.
Yes.
But what you expense, you want to make sure that it actually works.
Yes.
Revolut is also quite lucky, as initially we had a very strong engineering culture.
Okay.
So we're an engineering company, and that obviously helps a lot, making sure that our development process, DLC and everything, that's all in place, because we're engineering first initially, right? And I think when the company just started, I wasn't there, but already most of the people were very security cautious and technically savvy. So compared to many other startups or some challenger banks, when it was just the idea, they were just trying to build something.
Yep.
Also helps a lot that we're cloud native.
Okay.
And that also actually has an enormous impact on our threat landscape.
Yep.
It's quite interesting from even intelligence sharing exchange perspective. You have to be in the groups with the legacy banks, where it's all about the Windows and about these things and these talks. And meanwhile, you also have to be in some groups where it's just cloud native companies or like crypto exchanges. So there is technological stack and there is the industry. And you're literally balancing between both of them and trying to get what actually is relevant. And that's actually one of the regular conversations we do have with other challenger banks. That it's very hard to find. We will kind of have to spread around because it still feels like it's a new area, the challenger banks, and we even do share intelligence between each other, and that's actually I think it's going to happen more after that new DORA regulation, Article 45, and so on. But generally, we do struggle to get this actionable intelligence, and because we're cloud native, we're this, we're API, so kind of it really makes you. Pushes you to form those smaller societies of these novel companies which are trying to boost their defense against the fraud, against actors. Because sometimes we do see some of the threat actors, they just going across the challenger banks trying to use the same TTPs against all of us, and that works really well. Sometimes not. What actually also has enormous influence, because as a brand, we are a global brand.
Yep.
So we do expand a lot.
Yep.
And that sometimes attracts some opportunistic crime. Mm-hmm. So you enter some country where the banking system is quite legacy.
Yep.
And you're the best bank there. And that attracts early adopters. But early adopter type is also an opportunist frequently.
Yep. Absolutely. And
that's obviously might result in some negative activity towards your company. So it's very interesting, and it's quite diverse, which is not the case with the traditional banks.
Yep.
Right, those groups and actors which were historically targeting traditional banks and finance sector, that's a bit of a separate community, right? It's a very well established, let's say, crime layer.
Yep.
While for us, some see us as a new crypto exchanges. Some see us as a new Amazon. So it's very different.
Yep. Interesting. I really liked the point that you were making about just the knowledge sharing between the challenger banks as well. I know that we've spoken separately about this, and I was quite shocked when you first told me, because at the end of the day they are competitors, but I suppose like you say, security is security, and it was just refreshing to hear that there is dialogue going on between this sector, and I think that further amplifies justification as to why the challenger banking scene is coming up thick and fast on the traditional banking sector in terms of innovation and in terms of products, in terms of customers at the end of the day, which in turn brings the revenue. So when people argue the fact of it's just a cost centre, is it when you start looking at the all-round product of what it can offer? So that was a really interesting point. So I just want to sort of segue to a point that you made there around sort of, fraud prevention as one of the attacks and also sort of identity verification as well. How does the challenger bank scene actually handle these type of attacks?
That's a really interesting question. 'Cause that's one of the things which keeps us awake at night. I think any sort of not just challenger banks, any technology which does rely on the digital KYC, you are going to be subject of those deepfake attacks and some more like technically savvy ways of trying to register some fake accounts and so on and so on. And surprisingly, in this particular field, that's where we do have some collaborations with the legacy banks. Because those legacy banks also want to do digital KYC because it is the customer adoption, and we're living in cyber world, right? Things changed, and that's where we see some of them taking really also proactive approach and really being honest. There is also actually some really good work being done by some of the UK government groups, which do foster these collaborations and dialogues once it comes to the we can see AI-driven threats and this, synthetic things and so on. Internally, it's constantly a battle between how easy you want it to make the user to register a new account and how safe and fraud-proof you want it to be.
Yeah, okay.
Because obviously, some of the new controls you can implement, it might make certain things longer.
Okay.
These certain things longer convert to some other things, right? For it to grow. So it's always kind of like a balance in the struggle here. But I believe, especially in terms of deepfakes and those ideas, I think that's one of the better examples where the industry does work together and does kind of trying to stay on the top of these things, though it develops tremendously. Tremendously. I think some of the recent samples I've seen were almost CGI.
Really?
So literally, there was a trend of one of the groups hiring people from the creative industries, who previously dealt with the movie production and so on, to actually scale it in the fraud identity. Identity fraud, and that's quite fascinating to see. And sometimes involves some multinational, multi-country collaboration, and it's fascinating. So it's definitely a race in this sense. I think industry-wise there is a chatter of maybe, what about using the passport e-citizen, right? E-citizen, remember the program which got wrapped years ago? I do remember it from Cambridge times, actually. Or maybe there should be some other biometric factor. I find this area really fascinating. And you see how the biometric security just keeps scaling, on all the parts of our life and so on and so on. So that's definitely really cool. In terms of the regular AI use against the companies, we won't take into account deepfakes or anything else. I think it's still up and coming. So probably now it's not related to the identity fraud, but one of the concerning things is that AI allows you to go through the super large data sets in seconds. And considering the number of data on the web belonging to some companies thanks to ransomware groups that could allow you to map the whole supply chains and in a seconds. You don't need to invest. It's all about investment, right, from actor perspective. And that drives us to another topic, which is supply chain risk. Right, which is also included in DORA. And I think everyone is trying to do something around it. I'm actually a regular at the supply chain summit. So the past 4 years. So I get some good visibility of how the industry was developing. And there are all sorts of tools which give you those ratings and rankings, and it definitely looks very good on the papers.
Okay.
I think the key question which remains, what do you do with that?
Yes.
When it drops from 76 to 72, what's actionability?
Yeah, the qualitative side.
Yeah,
of it.
exactly. So intelligence actionability, that's a big problem.
Yep.
I think last time I did a survey across 20 CISOs, and I think just 2 of them, both working in the public organizations.
Yep.
They had that sort of a actionability process. What do they do if one of their vendor risks drops?
Yes.
The rest, no.
And
you just print these and
yeah, and that's essentially it. There's a lot of sort of TPs out there that they do a lot of automated scraping of intelligence, but there isn't that many that provide context behind the technical IOCs. It's like not a lot of them are blending sort of human with it. Flashpoint does, but other ones focus more on. It depends on which way that they actually focus it around. Like you say, your recorded futures are really good with the broader geospatial intelligence of what it might be, your Intel 471s as well. But going back to what you were saying there around just automated scraping of data without actually the context as to how it affects the business.
Yes,
it's not there really.
It can be loads of assumptions, yeah.
Yep.
Right? If you take Meta, it would be a super high-risk company because it's just brand. It doesn't mean that it's least secured.
Yep.
Right? Security teams can change.
Yep.
What if one of your vendors suddenly they decide to outsource security team to some cheaper location?
Yep.
Right. You might not even know about it. So I think it's a very tough problem to solve, to be fair.
Yep.
Without probably some very hardcore regulation. It's one of those areas where I would say something, some more regulation, some more clarity needed.
Yeah. Well, to come in on that one out, that's where I wanted to take the conversation next. Is the regulation and how your role is affected by it. 'Cause like you say, you've got sort of the FCA to abide to, you've got DORA to abide to. Now, do you see them? What's your view on? Do you see them as a blocker in terms of innovation? Do you see them as a protector in terms of what they can offer? What's your view on the sort of regulatory compliance in the fintech space?
It depends case by case.
Okay.
But generally, drive the engine.
Okay.
Which is good. I can say I really admire DORA the way it is, but I think it drives the agent there. So, companies start to have these conversations, how best to do it. And normally there are 2 ways of doing it. First way is if you're just doing something just to do it, to make sure it's done. And secondly, when you're actually ensure the impact. And in most fintechs, at least in the fintechs we have a chatter with, it's always balancing between these 2. Ideally, you want to have impact, right? You don't want to have something just for the sake of having something.
Yep.
But these are all questions related to compliance regulation of the many years, right? So it's just one of them. It's like, I already mentioned, but like with intelligence sharing and DORA, okay, we need to share intelligence. Where we need to share it?
Yep.
There are these 2 platforms. Okay, but there is no relevant intelligence. So how we need to share it, where we need to share it. So it's kind of up to, but maybe that's the approach. You start driving the agent, and then you see how the industry tries to cope with it, tries to solve these new things, and then based on that, you're updating the agent, you're updating the recommendations. Obviously, you want to have the solution to be industry driven, right?
Okay.
Because otherwise, it might just not really work.
Yeah.
Okay.
So with that being said, then, I kind of wanted to see your viewpoint on how you actually balance the innovation with this compliance that we talked about. So we've obviously talked quite a bit about the innovation of the Challenger Bank scene, and we've just touched on the compliance there. So is it do you adopt a secure by design methodology at Revolut, and do you have sort of agile dev life cycles, or how do you guys actually run as fast as you guys are growing?
I think actually I already answered this question. Initially, we're an engineering company.
Okay, sorry. Yep.
We're built by engineers.
Yep. Yep.
And I think it's been a few years from the start of the company when they started forming the security department.
Okay.
So, as I mentioned, we have this kind of a very strong engineering mindset, trying to be secure by design.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of engineering culture, I think Revolut is one of the greatest companies you can actually work. And that's the feedback I get from some interns and other people. So we have super robust school in that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not, again, as we scale, you need to make sure that there are proper reviews in place, that it's aligned with, security perspective and so on. But generally, we do have that thing embedded at the core, which helps a lot, obviously, compared to many other companies where you...
Yeah. Okay. So, obviously, has there been any, high-profile breaches, one in the sort of fintech space that you can sort of advise the audience and sort of lessons learned? Like an example could be the recent 23andMe breach, where I think there was about 7 million customers had their genetic and personal information. Starling, I know that they had a breach. I think it was meant to be 29 million or something like that, which, don't get me wrong, or was it billion? Either way, I'm sure it was pocket change. So is there any sort of breaches that has happened that you're aware of, how it came about, what you can do to avoid that moving forward?
And the recent one which rings a bell, Coinbase.
Okay.
They had this incident with the contractor company.
Go on, elaborate.
Yeah. Who... I think basically what happens, the contractors, they start exfiltrating the data through the rogue Slack server.
Yep. So like an insider threat, yeah.
Yeah. Insider threat actually is big on the agenda of pretty much all the fintechs.
Yeah.
So as you scale, you have to balance things, and you're global, and that means that there are many people from different backgrounds, from different working culture, and that's definitely a huge challenge. Especially with the age of the remote working. But that's a whole another topic, right?
And how do you sort of defend against insider threat then?
Well, I cannot tell how do we defend, because it would mean that the defenses will no longer be valid. I think you have to learn from the industry, so you need to see what happens around, and you need to ensure that there are relevant controls, that there is the zero trust and all the other things.
Yep.
So but I think it's a very tough, in the age of AI as well, it's a very tough challenge to solve, to be fair. There are many ways of doing it. I'm an adept of the thought that you need to have security culture is quite important, to be fair.
Yep.
Right? Because when these insider incidents happen, it means that something wrong internally.
Yep.
What happens. But generally, it's sort of like a new vector, because I remember I recently seen there was a campaign in US where employees of a few companies were receiving messages offering $50,000 for the data exfiltration.
Yep.
So I think it's kind of like this new up-and-coming thing, which becomes more accessible, less targeted. Probably comes from the groups like Lapsus and the Com and those new age hackers. New age hackers, right? So that's one of the reasons, again, why we do have some really good channels with other challenger banks, and exchanges, and see what are the best ways of tackling it. But it's definitely a hard challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that pretty much brings me to one of my final questions, Vlad, and it is looking from the outside, looking in at Revolut. It's like this machine that is just like it's running, and it's running faster than its legs can carry it. And how where do you sort of see it going in the next sort of 5 years? Not Revolut specifically, but the fintech scene in terms of the security landscape. Because I know that whilst everyone's getting to grips with AI, and we just had a quick chat before we hit play on this, and how it's a little bit in its turbulent teenager phase. So we're still getting to grips with that. But rearing its head around the corner, we've got obviously quantum encryption as well to come, and it's like, okay, how's that going to start affecting things? So where do you sort of see the next few years? Well, I sort of more so in the security space more than anything.
I think generally everyone is a bit in the waiting mode.
Yes,
especially once it comes to AI.
Yep.
To mention quantum. So potentially we will solve the problems once they're gonna arise.
Yep.
It's still not very clear how AI is fully going to be regulated. I think I recently had a chat with a few industry peers, and everyone is waiting for those big, massive incidents.
Yes.
You know, those are kind of the big
like
showcase of mistakes.
the
cases,
yes, yeah,
which will then drive for their agenda.
So something bad's going to happen.
Exactly.
Exactly.
If you're just going to do some threat modeling or or threat scenario discussion, you can go wild here, right?
Yeah.
With quantum especially, you can just. But remember when the internet? I mean, I was very young when the internet was just invented, right? Everyone was scared.
Yep.
Oh my God! You know, it's going to change. So we kind of maybe a bit in the same. At the same moment where we can all scared. I don't know really how it works. How it's gonna work. How people are gonna use it.
Yes.
For good, for the bad. Are there more good people? Are there bad people? So it's kind of in the wait list. So, but I do believe it's exciting times.
Yes.
Because again, you can use the same technology on the defense perspective and to bolster the general security.
Yep.
And actually, if you've seen the recent plans by the UK law enforcement, where they're reforming action fraud and introducing this new system which going to integrate all the intelligence and reporting and ensure full life cycle. So there are really some really cool cases where it's being applied and it's being integrated. Sort of a race, right? Yep,
absolutely. Vlad, you've been an absolute delight. I just want to thank you once again for coming on Secure Space Podcast. If anybody's got any questions for Vlad, I'll be sure to put all his information down below. But once again, Vlad, thanks for coming on Secure Space Podcast.
Thanks, Nick.
Cheers.